The Stoics practiced Memento Mori, which means remember you will die. The essence of this concept is captured by a genre of art called vanitas. This genre gained prominence in 16th and 17th century Northern Europe, particularly in the Netherlands. It reminded viewers of the transience of life, the futility of pleasure, and above all, the certainty of death. A painting has been displayed in the Louvre for over 3 centuries, barely noticed by crowds hurrying past to take selfies in front of the Mona Lisa. It depicts 3 objects on a plain surface: a skull, a shrinking flower, and an hourglass. If you stop long enough, it begins to seem less like a painting and more like an existential mirror. The Dutch Golden Age was an era of growing cities and merchant wealth. Into this mood of accumulation and optimism, vanitas artists introduced their quiet, destabilizing question. And then what? That question is deeply uncomfortable. It is the existential reminder of Memento Mori. In this essay, we explore the concept and practice of Memento Mori and discuss whether or not it is actually about death or life. Let's get into the video. Tradition as old as triumph. The phrase itself is Roman. According to tradition, when a general returned to Rome in triumph, paraded through the streets to the roar of the crowds, laurel wreath on his heads, captives in chains behind him, a slave stood at his shoulder and whispered into his ear, Memento Mori. It is a strange image. At the apex of human success, in the moment designed to feel permanent, someone was paid to remind the hero that none of this will last. Romans did not consider this morbid. They considered it wise. The reminder preserved something essential, clarity about what the win was actually worth and what it was not. This practice did not begin with the Romans, nor end with them. In ancient Egypt, a carved wooden mummy figure was passed around the table at feasts to heighten pleasure. If you knew the evening would end, you might actually pay attention. Medieval monks carved Memento Mori into monastery walls and used human skulls as paperweights as a daily philosophical discipline. They trained themselves to see clearly. What all of these traditions share is a refusal to treat death as an event that happens later. They insist, with varying degrees of gentleness, that death is not waiting at the end of life. It is threaded throughout it. The lie of postponement. We live in an era skilled at pushing death out of view. The dying are moved to hospitals and hospices. The dead are prepared by professionals behind closed doors, made to look at funerals as though merely sleeping. We have phrases like passed away, lost and gone that soften the blunt fact. Someone was alive, and now they are not, and they never will be. Most of it comes from kindness, a sincere impulse to protect one another from pain. But there is a cost. When death is invisible, it becomes psychologically almost fictional, something that happens to other people in other circumstances. A plot point we know in the abstract, but do not truly feel applies to us. Not yet, not really. Heidegger called this state fallenness, the tendency of humans to lose their way in the busyness of everyday life, to become so absorbed in routines, distractions, and social expectations that they forget the fundamental condition of their existence. We are, as he put it, beings toward death. But most of us live as though we are beings toward next week. There are consequences. We tolerate bad relationships for another year, telling ourselves we will deal with it after things settle down. We defer the book we want to write, the journey we want to take, the conversation we need to have. We live as though we have been given an extension we have not been promised. The skull on the desk is not about death. There is a temptation to read Memento Mori as pessimism, as a philosophy that drains colour from the world by reminding us that everything fades. Epicurus, whose philosophy is often misread as a call to pleasure, was deeply preoccupied with death. His most famous argument was that death is nothing to us, because when death is present, we are not, and when we are present, death is not. If death isn't an experience we will have, our fear of it evaporates. For Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled an empire while keeping a private journal of reflections, the daily contemplation of death was a form of gratitude. When he wrote in Meditations that a person could leave life at any moment, he was not issuing a warning. He was directing toward a quality of attention that most of us reserve, if we ever find it at all, for periods of crisis. We know this quality. It arrives uninvited when someone we love is seriously ill or when we receive frightening news. Suddenly, ordinary things like a cup of tea, a phone call, an afternoon light falling across a room, all acquire a weight and vividness they lacked before. We become almost present. Memento Mori shows we do not need a crisis to get there. We can choose it. There is something else that awareness of death does. It forces us to make choices about what we actually value. An infinite life would require no such choices. With unlimited time, you could do everything, learn every language, master every skill, repair every relationship, and visit every place that you ever wanted. You would never have to decide what mattered most because everything could eventually be done. It is because time is finite that your choices reveal something true about who you are. What you do with a limited life is, fundamentally, who you are. This is why the skull on the desk was never about death itself. It was about life, about the quality of engagement possible when we stop treating our time here as something that will renew itself indefinitely. The Roman general with the slave whispering at his shoulder was not asked to stop celebrating. He was asked to celebrate honestly, with full knowledge of what he held and how briefly he would hold it. The practice of Memento Mori has never pretended to be comfortable. Instead, it offers something more durable than comfort, clarity, and a sense of presence. To genuinely reckon with mortality is to stand in a particular relationship to your life. The petty grievances that consume entire days begin to look different. The things you have been avoiding acquire an urgency that cannot be deferred indefinitely. The people you love appear, briefly but vividly, as the temporary and irreplaceable presences they are. The monks who carved those words into stone did not spend their days paralyzed from dread. The awareness of death was not the enemy of their work, it was what gave their work its shape. There is a moment, sitting with a great Venetian painting, when the skull gains a new level of conclusiveness. The flower really is wilting, the hourglass really is running out. On the other side of that recognition, something opens up that feels less like fear and more like attention, like presence. That attention turned fully toward the life you're actually living is what Memento Mori has always been about. So go forward and live, and remember that you will die. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.